So session 3 is on, we're still in the mythological chapter. The first session, we spoke on the astrology, the largest picture possible, the celestial picture, and the importance of mythology within that as a counterbalance to the reign of reason, uniting the queen of intuition with the king of reason. Second session was on the departure. Today is on trial and treasure. I have spent most time talking about the collective journey that we're on. I think that is necessary because we're heading into the Aquarian age, which is characterized by a collective revolution. And so the rewriting of the narrative that we're on is partly personal or individual, dependent on where you are in your own personal journey. We're all at a different juncture in the heroic pilgrimage. But then we share space and share field in the collective. And so we're redesigning the collective mythology. And somebody asked me to go over the 4Ds from the first class. They fit here with this notion of what are we stepping into? How do we orient ourselves as individuals for the most maximal benefit to the collective? And this little list that I've come up with is it's arbitrary. It's by no means definitive. It's a sketch. You may have your own impressions. You may find that other, particularly astrologers, have different kinds of impressions. They have to do with what the signature of the incoming age is. So as we depart one world, we're trying to let go. We're trying to grieve. We're trying to let go. We're trying to resist the urge to cling to the ground, to the certainty, to the way it was. But then we're also trying to align our energies with what's coming in so that there's less resistance, so that we're ahead of the curve. And these four characteristics are just touchstones. They're a loose list. One of which is decentralization. Another one is the diversity within unity. Then there is the discernment. And the final one is dignity or humanity. Just to make it simple, I put them into 4Ds. So the decentralization, as you can feel these large structures, these monopolies, they dominate the current landscape. And in a way, they're disenfranchising. They're disempowering of the ordinary people. You have too much consolidation in a pyramid scheme, like a Bernie Madoff pyramid scheme. And you can think of the big players on the monopoly board right now, the Googles, the big tech, the big pharma, the big agra, the big government. It's the bigger they are, the harder they are to fall, but the more disenfranchising, the consolidation of power and resources is pushed to the top. Google is way too powerful right now. YouTube, Tesla, Facebook, Meta. They're like their own country. Pfizer, you name it. ExxonMobil. Right. And then what happens is that without consolidation of power, you can buy You can buy influence. You can exert influence. You can change policy. You can find and exploit loopholes in tax so that people at the bottom or in the middle or even close to the top don't have the same capability, access. And this is at the tail end. Like we never saw mega companies, never saw Bezos's before. The Bezos and the Musk are the new phenomenon, totally new phenomenon. So the idea is to substitute or to begin to transition or to at least start with reimagining what an alternative structure could be. And this is where the pyramid can be replaced by the mandala, can be replaced by the Knights of the Round Table. It's decentralized. That means everybody has access, information, economic systems, political voices. It's distributed. Like blockchain is a good example of an Aquarian, the emergence of an Aquarian concept. It's transparent. Everybody has access. Everybody can see what's going. You can't hide on the blockchain. Nobody owns it. It's peer to peer. So there's a kind of there has to be a transition where the larger conglomerate is disrupted. So I'm thinking like Airbnb disrupted the hotel conglomerate. Suddenly you and I who just have an apartment or a room can share that. We don't have to go through a middleman. That's an Aquarian signature. Now, does it have its own shadow? Does Airbnb then become have its own problems? Yes. I mean, if you look at certain areas where Airbnb just totally becomes out of balance, it has its own residual consequences. You have to always keep an eye on the shadow. Anyway, so decentralization. So those of you that are wanting to put one foot into the future, this is how to align your imagination, prime your imagination as you reconstruct. I mean, our people here in Bali certainly have come here with the intention to be part of a reconstructive effort. So they're working on models that empower more people, people that work with the gift economy, people that work with exchanges of goods and services that are much more based on equity, sensitivity to the environment. Then there's the diversity within unity. So what we have seen in the last 5 years is a big push towards diversity. Okay, that's good. Again, it has to do with bringing the margins to the fore and the margins to the center, the people that have been excluded, overlooked. That part is good. That part is noble. But then we also have to be reasonable and realistic with the means by which we've done that in a way. What I've seen, and I offer this for your own contemplation, is that it's been too much emphasis on the diversity and not enough on the unity. The same can be true for white nationalism, for example, just as an example, or religious authority in some other nations across the planet where too much emphasis is on unity. And there's a deep crackdown on the diversity. So this is an example of how one pole, what the ramifications of one pole being out of balance. So at least in the United States, the sense is that we have grown even greater divide. And so this is one consideration I'd like you to meditate on is these last few years have you been championing a cause and unbeknownst also contributing to an even greater divide. I think this is, in all honesty, a very important consideration for people that are practicing contemplative methodologies, examining their shadow, examining their bias, looking to put their best foot forward. It's not always that obvious. You can be filled with the right motivation and then subtly you can be reinforcing greater division. Why is that? Because you've only seen one of the poles. There's always a dichotomy or duality. You really love your political party, let's say, but then in championing your political party, have you been also responsible to even widen the gap by disparaging the other side so that we get to a point 3, 4, 5 years later where we can't even have conversations? And so this is actually what this crisis of division is showing us is how to reclaim that underlying mythos of unity, not to abandon your cause or your value system. Your value system is, it's your life. You get to choose what your values are. You're for abortion, you're against abortion. You're for a border, you're against a border. Whatever it is, it's your free life. What you choose to eat, what you choose to put in your body, how you spend your money, whatever it is. But then how do you, and this is a koan. I'm not saying this is easy to figure out. How do you also share space with people that don't share your opinion? That I think we have lost, and that we definitely will need. That we need today, actually. We need today. How do you feel that it was so essential that we all get vaccinated? Fine. That's your right. But then how do you share someone who doesn't agree? That is a big challenge. But if you're in a spiritual space, what you don't expect to have challenges? It all should be one-sided, lopsided, easy. But think about the implications of championing one position. Is it that the end game is that everybody think like you? Is that when we win? When everybody ticks every single box down to your own idiosyncrasy? And if that seems ridiculous to you as an end game, then what would the alternative be? Well, it means that, the person to my left ticks two boxes that I share, and of 7 or 8, we're not in agreement. The person to my right, one box, the person in front of me, 6 boxes. How do we share space? So this is the conundrum of the diversity within the unity. Then there's the discernment. The discernment has to do with the fact that at some point recently we've left the realm of certainty. That there is no true unequivocal facts anymore. We're swimming in a swirl of information overload, misinformation, disinformation, and definitely ulterior motives or agendas. I mean, that is becoming quite clear when you have whistleblowers like Snowden, as when you have the Twitter files, you have Assange, you have these people that are revealing that everything is not savory as it appears. The motivations of the big tech, the motivations of the big pharma, the motivations of the big agri, the motivations of the food industry is mostly based on greed and control. And so what we end up being the recipient of is information that has been tainted or cross-contaminated. I can't remember if it's the president of New Zealand that had to step down because there was a obvious conflict of interest between her policy and the remunerary rewards, the financial rewards or gains of her associates in the pharmaceutical industry. So what that does is it puts us in a predicament where it's unsettling because we don't know what exactly is true. Which news, which bit of research, which station, which channel, which article, which influencer. My God, the influencers. Just think about an influencer on social media, which is the new platform. Do you think that they have always your best interest at heart? And just the idea that there are influencers is exactly the point. What is that dragon pointing to? That there are so many bastions of power and so many lines or channels of communication mainlined into our veins, directly into our amygdala, trying to exert influence on us. And then also we have to realize that as a fractal civilization with so many screens, our response also exerts a kind of unconscious influence. So if enough people see a little bit of data that quote unquote goes viral and it stirs up the emotion, and there's a rally cry for us to champion a certain kind of agenda, and we haven't stopped to analyze, we haven't stopped to inquire, we haven't stopped to challenge, we haven't stopped to ask ourselves, where is this coming from? Then we are complicit. And now we have been turned into a multiplicity of influencers. And suddenly our attention and our emotional set and our reactivity has been hijacked for a greater purpose, one that we may not be actually all that aligned to. So discernment. When we were in graduate school studying it was one of my worst classes was the statistical design. But one of the things they teach you to do is look not on the face or surface of the statistics, but deep down into the power of the numbers, and look at how it's been designed. Is it double blind? Is it not double? How many participants? Does it really have power and significance? Who are the agencies involved in the inquiry of the design? Is there conflict of interest? Suddenly you have to spend much more upfront time looking at the little bit of information that's coming in. This is called discernment. Now, is it really that separate from what the yoga tradition and the Buddhist tradition and the contemplative mystical traditions worldwide have asked us to do? No, they say the world is like an illusion. This is the modern version of Maya. It's just Maya on steroids right now. For so many reasons, for so many reinforcement contingencies, we are definitely in the matrix now. And the veils are so thin between what's real and unreal that training in this ability to not react immediately, to question everything, including authority. This is very Aquarian. Aquarian is about a revolution. Aquarian is about questioning authority, even your guru. Not to do it rudely, and not to do it mean-spirited, and not to do it out of the impulse of destruction, like question the patriarchy. But maybe you don't want to destroy it because you don't know what might happen if you do. You don't know what might happen to your little boys if you start castrating them too early. Disempowering the masculinity in our boys is not a good solution for toxic, quote unquote, toxic masculinity. So discernment is the third D, and the final one is dignity, which, if you look at the current wars that are happening, particularly the one that's just going to potentially just break your heart, what's happening in Israel, Palestine, whatever side of the conflict you may find yourself, here again is the opportunity to also find some basic humanity. The us versus them binary is basically one that is reinforced on the idea of the lack of safety, the threat, danger, fight, flight, predicament is one that narrows our perspective. And in that narrowing, we forget our basic commonality in humanity. And I heard the Dalai Lama have reiterated over and over again at his some 80 years old that this century is about human beings celebrating their diversity, but remembering their humanity. So again, just putting there that the 4Ds there are just a way to orient yourself so that you are on the vanguard, you are on the frontier of the incoming energy. You're aligning in that way. And whatever you do individually, whatever you do collectively, whether it's just be in your own family, whether it be in your school network, your career network, on social media. And the other question that came up is I had a number of people ask me to help them with their myth. Miles, what about this? Or can you recommend something? Okay, so no is the answer, and for good reason. I think it's a good illustration. I'm not saying everybody's coming from this place, but if you're still struggling to find a myth as a reflection for all of us, part of what might be happening is you're still operating from the left brain. You're still looking for the right myth. I don't want to miss out. I need help finding the right myth for me. So the question is there a right myth? Is there a right myth for you? And if you will choose the wrong one, and then you'll miss your opportunity, and the train will just leave the station. Bye-bye. No, the myth is empty. You could approach it. First of all, don't outsource. The myth is personal. Don't outsource to me or your wife, spouse, partner. Don't ask your friend. Don't ask Facebook. Part of the Aquarian shift is, and the decentralization is also, there's an internal decentralization, that part of us that wants to outsource to somebody else who knows, the guru, the teacher, the elder. Okay, there's tremendous karmic merit in devotion. A part of this transition is devotion also has to be upgraded on the inside to your inner diamond queen. And how do you get there? It's just like riding a bike. How do you get there? You fall. First, you fall. We want to know, part of us, or the people that may be struggling to find a myth, all want to know at the outset what the right myth is, quote unquote, the right one for them, because underneath it, they don't want to miss out, or they don't want to fail. They don't want to find the wrong one. And this is already on a basic premise assumption, the unskillful way to go. In a way, it's not about the myth, it's the approach. We're talking about departure energy right now. Are you willing to just go? I was talking to a friend who, is making a career transition. You know, he's tried a number of different things. I like that. I like that he's in an experimental mode. He's open. He's looking at new horizons. He's exploring. He'll try one thing, he'll take it to a certain extent, and then he'll realize this is not for me. He doesn't have to know at the outset. How can you? So try to flip the script or the consciousness around and look at the one that's embarking and ask yourself, can you do it can you choose in spite of the uncertainty? Just to be in motion, just to be in forward motion. Then the myth already begins. You've entered the labyrinth. I was going to say sometimes Geshe Tenzin Zopa does like a quasi astrological reading or a kind of um, well, it includes agencies and sort of a predictive divination. Again, it's not based on reason. I mean, if I was sitting at an ordinary level of consciousness with him, I might have a civilized conversation. But then what he's doing in his divination, people ask him all kinds of personal questions about their family, and he goes into a meditative space and does a divination. What's he's doing? He's switching the channel. He's going from the reason to the mythopoetic. He's calling in other beings. He's calling in other kinds of information. He's crossing a threshold and asking for guidance. It comes in the form of different kinds of forms, symbols, images, whispers. And then they have to be interpreted. Yes, maybe you do bring the left brain online and you interpret it. Then you have king and queen together in dialogue to make a decent choice. Your myth is like a divination. You can pick up a book like Joseph Campbell's 13 Myths. He has a book out there on Amazon. It's got 13 myths from all over the world. And you flip through the page and you just randomly, is it really random? No, it's called a synchronicity. There's one already budding on your consciousness. Oh, I could go this way, but then your right brain comes in or your left brain comes in and says, no, this is not the one. It's not appropriate for me for this reason. And then you're deliberating. And every day you deliberate, you stay in the stasis of the ordinary world. So it's a microcosm, in other words. Your decision about your myth is also in itself mythological. It means that there may still be a part of you that is reluctant to embark into the unknown. Is it reluctant to face the possibility of getting it wrong? Let me tell you something about the labyrinth at Chartres. Inevitably, when you're walking in that labyrinth, you will find an impasse. You will make the quote unquote wrong turn and you'll bump your head. And you'll have to turn around and backtrack and you'll choose another, the alternative path. And lo and behold, inevitably, you'll bump your head on another closed door. And in the immediate where we're close to the trees, it feels like wrong choices. It feels like you've made missteps. It feels like a mishap. It feels like you're not getting close to your destination, your goal. Something must be wrong with you. Maybe it kicks up and stirs up all your inadequacies. Maybe there's existential doubt whether you can make it to the center. Maybe the voice says, maybe this isn't for you. You should just give up. But if you look at from the mythopoetic meaning making of the endeavor to make your way through the labyrinth, each one of those impasses, each one of those missteps, each one of those, moments of mini crisis, they end up being the most valuable training opportunities to draw out of you greater resources, resilience, to work through doubts, to have conviction, to work through fatigue in order to have endurance, to work through your rigidity in order to have flexibility. If you want all those assets, those qualities are the arriving at the center. If you want them, what possible way could you attain them if not by your distraction, your impasse, your mini crisis? There's no other way to arrive at the center without getting lost. It's in the getting lost that we find the inner resource. So there is no bad myth for you, and there's no bad time for you. The time is now. The myth is the one that's right in front of you. It will take you inevitably to question yourself. It's not supposed to be clean, easy, straightforward. If it is, you're on the wrong path. If you've elected to take something that you know inside and out, through and through, that it doesn't shake anything up, it doesn't make you question anything, it actually ennobles your ego because you can pontificate about it, then it's the wrong myth. And then it's actually showing you why it's the wrong myth. So even there, it's not the wrong myth. It was intentionally designed to show you your own hubris. So we're in week 3. You have by tomorrow. Okay. So let me one of the things that we should note at the outside, this is I hope some of you are reading Return with the Elixir. Maybe you've already gotten to the chapter where the vision of the astrological zodiac was spinning counterclockwise. And then I asked Lynn Bell about it, and she said, yeah, usually when you look down at your chart, it's clockwise, and when you look up at the stars, it appears, deceptively appears, that the planets are rotating counterclockwise. And then when I took that little bit of information to my mentor, Bill Cousineau, who is one of the senior still living students, direct students of Joseph Campbell, prolific author and pilgrimage guide. He has some 30 books to his name. And Phil said, that Joseph Campbell had taught him that the hero's journey should spin counterclockwise. In other words, instead of going from 12 to 1 to 2, as if you're looking at a clock and it's predictable, should go from 12 to 11 to 10 to 9 to 8. And he said the reason for this is that mythopoetic time is not linear. It's cyclic and it's revolutionary. It's counterintuitive. And so it spins in the opposite direction than your nervous system predicts. And he said, if you do it right, it should jolt you. In a way, it should actually jolt you out of your habitual tendencies and expectations, so that time itself becomes like another time zone. It's an alternative universe. And when I heard that word jolt, it should jolt you, I think about the the Zen master with the cane. You are earnestly sitting there upright trying to meditate, and the Zen master, unbeknownst to you and for no goddamn reason, you're the little child that has done everything right, and then the Zen master strikes you when you least expect it, and when you were doing it so perfectly. Why? It's like I was doing it perfectly. I was counting my breath. I was minding my own business. My posture's great. How dare you? Yes. Yes. To snap you out of your perfection mode, or to snap you out of your distraction, whatever the case may be. It's a disruptive. It's a disruptor. Just when you think, just when it was safe to go back in the sea. So Joseph Campbell understood that the hero's journey had three phases. We call this the Holy Trinity. The three phases are also represented in all the meta maps that we're using. So there are three phases of Jung. There are three phases of the Tibetan book of the Bardo process of rebirth. There is a Holy Trinity in every great religion. There's a Holy Trinity. There's a Holy Trinity in alchemy, in Hinduism, and Buddhism, Shaivism, you name it. Three is a good number. First phase is about departure or separation. Separation from what? Separation from the tribe, literally, because these maps were for rite of passage. When we get to Jung, separation from ordinary consciousness or from the ego. When we get into Tantra, separation from the elements that comprise the actual body of this life, as you head into the disillusion of the bardo. Middle phase is the initiation. So when a youngster undergoes a great trial that almost kills them, or that kills the immature part of them and hastens in their hero. In the Jung model, it will be the realm of the shadow, and in the Tibetan model, it will be the bardo. Then from the trial or from the initiation comes the return, the integration phase. Once you have undergone trial and experienced the reward, the two come together. Then you can't just savor your success separated from the tribe. It only bears its optimal fruit when it's for the tribe and it's applied, integrated. It becomes fully yours, but not exclusively yours. Yours in communion, yours in community. In the Jungian model, when we get there, this is about experiencing the collective unconscious and the notion of self, but then bringing it back into a more flexible ego. So it's the same. They're all saying the same thing. They're all saying the same thing, just different languages. So you don't worry if it's new. By the time we get through 12 weeks and we go through three models all saying the same thing, one or more will begin to make its impact or imprint. And of course, most of you have already done all this. Probably for you, the only reason to be on this is that it adds greater motivation to do it collectively. Whatever your journey work is, it's nice to have a touchstone of accountability week after week. And that's a perfectly good motivation for doing this, even though you've been through the material many times. In the Tibetan model, the return is the rebirth. So once you've called in agencies to redesign your soul, to give your soul a new body mind complex to inhabit, then you have to step into that embodiment in the world. If it's the Bodhisattva path, then you have to, what good is the Bodhisattva path if not to act on behalf of others? So you see all these maps, they're both individual and they're collective. I mean, that's simply put, you guys are all individually on your own journey. I mean, part of what I'm going to do with this map tonight is just for those that are unfamiliar and for those that want to refine, we'll go through some of the stages so that you prime your mind towards the landmarks. But the point of this is, where are you on the map? That's your question for today's class. The assignment for the first class was to think about to select a myth, to live by, to be inspired by, in order to prime your mythopoetic or your right brain. Second assignment from last class was to actually experiment with letting go. Where in your life can you do the surrender of the departure in your musculature, where there's gripping and clinging? Katrina and I share this, can I say it, like a little bit of anal retentiveness. We like things. I mean, part of it is good, was like we like things precise. But then Bali shows us it's not possible to live that way. Possible. And so, we often have to confront the fact that we want it. We will do absolutely everything to get it just so. And then when there's that moment where it's showing us it's impossible, and you're on the verge of having a breakdown or feeling like you're a failure or made the wrong choice to come to Bali. And then what you're looking for is just a little bit more. Let me apply just a little bit more effort. Maybe my will alone can will this into existence. That little devil there, that little dragon there, what it's actually pointing us to is it can't be that way. Your will is not, your will is PhD level will is not going to get you through this. You have to bring online. And as I'm saying this, who am I really talking to? You all know that. You all know me well enough. This is one of my big Achilles heels. It's one of the hardest things for me to do. It's one of the biggest bugaboos I have with Emily, which is like, I have to do it on my own. It has to be good. It has to be really good, and it has to be on time, and it has to be delivered just so. And that can be a program, that can be a book, but it can just be like trying something new. I'm in the boxing gym doing something new here in Bali. Everybody's into wellness and fitness. I wanted to try something new. What's it like at 48 years old to try something new? I am the most out of shape guy in the gym. My coach is 22 years old and ripped to shreds. 22 years old, the guy. Right? So part of that pilgrimage is showing me all the places where it has to be just so. And the impossibility, it's impossible. It's impossible. What's impossible? To get it just right. No, you have to let go. Now the gym has been an opportunity. There's no like emphasis on result. The emphasis is on process. All the places where I have to be, the technique has to be perfect. When I'm the beginner that's out of shape, I'm the one that's huffing and puffing 30 minutes in. Can't even lift my leg. Never mind kick well. This is what I meant by the labyrinth at Chartres. What is it? You go on that journey, you go into the unknown. What it shows you is your own mind. It shows you your default program, and it reveals to you where your growth opportunity lies. So for me and Katrina, we like it just so. We have a lot of competence. We have a lot of, and there's nothing wrong with those things. But how do you train to surrender that, to be the beginner, to allow for the imperfection? Well, in my journey to Japan, one of the aesthetics so beautifully captured is the perfection in the imperfection. The broken is perfect. The broken is beautiful. The out of shape is beautiful. Actually, the out of shape is beautiful not because it's out of shape. The out of shape is beautiful because of the surrender and the acceptance. The out of shape is not beautiful when there's no acceptance. Do you follow? And I mean, when I say out of shape, I don't mean just my body in the gym. I mean the broken vase or the, whatever the artwork is, the aesthetic, the plant that is, the bamboo cutting, the edges, the scene where it's just a little, it's not the full picture of the vista. The picture is broken. The picture frame is off. There's just a little detail of a river and a tree. The rest is blank. What is that trying to suggest to us? That the off is also beautiful. The off is expansive. It is another gesture from the artist to use the Zen cane to awaken us to the possibilities, to open the horizons, to open the telephoto lens, to relax. So we've done the departure, but just to go over the sub stages here: the ordinary world, the call to adventure, and the refusal of the call. Sometimes the crossing the threshold and the meeting the mentor flipped. I've included the mentor before the crossing the threshold. Ordinary world is the ordinary bandwidth of consciousness. Is also where you're most familiar, your ordinary world, your comfort zone, the predictable, the certain, the ordinary world pre-pandemic, and the pandemic was again a great disruptor of the ordinary world. Now we're 4 years in, we see that the world has completely changed, completely thrown us for a doozy. Those that elected to surf are now surfing it. Others are still, treading water and hoping to go back. There is either, I mean, also many of you, I know, like, is Stu on the line? There's other people that have, because of your maturity, you may have cycled through this already once. So it's not inconceivable, depending where you are in your age, to go through this journey multiple times. And then sometimes you go through it and you think, well, that was the hardest thing of my life, but thank God that happened to me. That is the hallmark of a successful completion of the hero's journey. Is that was the hardest thing that's ever happened to me, and thank God. That's when you know you've completed. That was the hardest thing. It almost killed me. And as Damien Eccles, after 20 years on death row, finally got released, said, and I would have it no other way. 20 years on death row, separated from his beloved. They beat the shit out of him every night for a crime he did not commit. And I'd have it no other way. That's when you know you've completed the hero's journey. Now, is Damien now free for the rest of his life in his mid-40s or 50s to make a new kingdom upon his return? Will there be no more opportunities? Will he just stay comfortable there? Your kingdom becomes the new cage, the new prison. So those of us that went through the pandemic and arrived somewhere else, a new locale, and you build a family and you build a house and you get your PMA, your business license in Bali, and you're trying to build a comfortable life. Before too long, that becomes its own cage. Does it mean you have to leave Bali? No. Doesn't necessarily have to mean physically. just means that watch the habit, the evolutionary habit that wants predictability, it wants security, it wants to know, it wants to feel comfortable. And inevitably, those things, what they do is they diminish the vitality. So the call to adventure is a signal from the soul that it's time to move on. It's time to change. It's time to grow. And usually it comes unexpectedly and it comes like a kick in the teeth. It comes in a form of a symptom that you actually want to damper. So in my case in the book I talk about panic attacks. Maybe you've had panic attacks, maybe you've had anxiety attacks. And maybe you've asked the psychiatrist to give you a medication so that the un the uncomfortability of it is reduced. But from my perspective, and no judgment against the use of medication, but what I'm suggesting is what if that's a signal now that you're not paying attention to and it's a call from your soul? What if it's a telephone call from your soul? And now you've clipped the communication line, just like in Bali, the cell towers go down. Another way that the call can come is that you hear your partner says, I don't know if we can be in this relationship anymore because you're just so X. And then what do? Oh, it's their fault. You're not working hard. You know, the message can come in so many different ways. The message can come from society. The message can come from your body. The message can come from your soul. The message can come from your partner. It's all saying the same thing. It's time to change. It's time to leave. It's time to grow. It's time to expand. And inevitably, the refusal comes, which is no, I don't want to change. I shouldn't have to change. I can't afford to change. I can't leave. I can't start anew. I mean, after Emily lost Mindstream, at leaving Nalanda, then losing Mindstream, and then coming to Bali, it was like I don't even know if I have the energy to recreate a life here. I'm totally depleted. I'm spent. That was her labyrinth moment. She's still in the labyrinth. That's her dead end moment. Struggling to understand in midlife what comes next for me when I've had two kids and I've built successful businesses multiple times that have, for one reason or another, kicked me out of the comfort zone, dissolved like fire, dissolved in the fire. I think personally, I think if you're listening to the call right now, my sense after talking to many of you, so I'm just going to make a generalization. The pandemic has served as a catapult or catalyst for many of us to reconsider. This has been the biggest collective call to adventure. Each of us in our own way, individually. You know, you broke your leg, you lost your job, someone died, your health gave out, your paycheck got cut, your bank account drained. It's loss, disruption, terror. A very few of you, but that is also true. You know, angels came and visited you and tapped you on the shoulder. This is also a call. The burning bush of Moses is also an archetype. You had a dream, you had a vision. Maybe up until that moment, you didn't trust the visions. You were too scared to talk about them. You didn't want to be a maniac. They were unfamiliar to you, didn't know how to interpret them. All part of the refusal. Should I listen to them? Probably not. If I talk about them, what might they think? Refusal. Then from the refusal, eventually something else happens, something else bottom out. In the 12-step program, they say that you don't start the journey until you hit rock bottom. You don't even start the journey. The journey doesn't even begin until you hit rock bottom. What is rock bottom? Rock bottom is when patience, resilience, know-how, and skill, your acumen fail you. Your ordinary coping strategies don't work anymore. The alcohol doesn't work anymore. It's just destroying your life. It's destroying your relationships. Your bank account is down to nothing. You've lost your job. You're either going to die on the street physically because of medical condition, or you're going to be arrested. You hit a rock bottom. Then, just like the Buddha's story, the palace walls, he has an inclination to wonder what's beyond it. He has a slightly different story. It's another kind of archetype where the ordinary world is really comfortable. The ordinary world is really comfortable. You could graze endlessly on the senses. But something, I mean, this is the soul. The soul visits him and says, what's beyond the palace walls? And he sneaks out. He disobeys the king of reason. He disobeys authority. He sneaks out of the palace wall into the unknown world where he is assailed by things he's never seen before, experiences he's never had before. New realities dawn upon his consciousness as a result. And he's being guided. His first mentor actually is his charioteer. It's a great metaphor. I love the charioteer. The charioteer also appears in the Bhagavad Gita. Using a vehicle to transition between worlds. Triptolemus in the Greek rides a chariot driven by serpents. Something similar in the Mayan. Hermes. So now we're in the mid phase, cross threshold. I'm just sketching this out. There's so many iterations. We have to, in a way, constantly recognize it's just a map. It's just a model. The model never captures the entirety of human experience. Just as a paper map can never capture the terrain. It's just a suggestion. I'm sketching out as many possible iterations as I can, but it can never capture it. And mostly this is for you to internalize some of the landscape markers so that intuitively you can recognize, where might I be in this journey? And more than that, when you start to recognize, okay, I'm in the Shire, I'm in the protective zone, I haven't left yet. I haven't even had the call yet, but very doubtful. I mean, why would you join a silly program like the Crucible if you hadn't had an inclination that it's time to change? Hell, just the name itself gives it away. You're a self-selected group that's already ready to embark, or if not, well into your journey. There's no coincidence. Once you meet the mentor is the teacher, the mentor is the tradition, the mentor is the book, the mentor is the movie, the mentor is the tree that speaks to you, the mentor is the inner angel that speaks to you. So many iterations there. It's the one that guides you. At least at first it is an external one, but really it's only a mirror for the internal one, so that you start to consult your own intuition. Then you meet test enemies and allies. Okay, these are also both external and internal. So for the example, the tests, small tests, the Black Hawk Down from last week, the electricity goes out, small things, small disruptors, not the major disruptor at the top of the departure. And by the way, it goes without saying, but maybe I should just, because many of you For many of you, childhood was already your great disruptor. Childhood trauma was already the great disruptor. Okay, it already ushered in what's called the end of innocence. So these are the little tests, and I was saying that for some of you, the great disruptor occurred during childhood trauma. Okay, I want to just say this because it's both. It's possible that that happened very early, this thing that stole the innocence. Okay, and usually in tribal cultures, the rite of passage, uh, it's done methodically. It's done intentionally. That's the better word. It's done intentionally. So young boys are pulled from their families, and there's likewise rites of passage for young girls. But childhood trauma does this uninvitedly, and it has the hallmark of the end of innocence and the disruption of the status quo and the disruption of safety, predictability. But what it doesn't have necessarily is all the facility around for support. It hasn't been set up for. It wasn't set up for your benefit to go through it. So what happens is that the evolutionary apparatus of our own biology steps in and does the best job it can, which it can lead to some level of disconnection or dissociation, survival-based disconnection or dissociation. And for a whole number of reasons we can't get into now, that can become the default mode. And so even though you're climbing out of childhood trauma and starting your life and going to school and finding relationships and having kids can be classified as heroic, no doubt. It is possible that your survival adaptation followed you through all of those hallmarks. And so in a way, even though you've been living one life, sort of getting on with it, another part of you is still frozen in time under what I call the ice sheet. So just like Phil Cousineau is asking us to reverse the clock, and I'm suggesting we go back in time. How do you go back in time? You revisit the major impact zone of your life. If it's a childhood trauma, part of the assignment in therapy or in trauma work is to create the necessary crucible of rapport, safety, consistency, reliability, co-regulation. You create that now so that you can go back in time in what I call the time machine. You regress in the service of ego. You go back to the wounding. You make your way through Hermes' teleportation vehicle, through the ice sheets, down into the bowels of the belly of the beast, down underground. You descend into hell. You go into Hades. You go back to the moment of impact or impacts. But now you have the light of consciousness with you. Now you have the light of real-time consciousness, and you have the co-regulation of your allies. You bring with you your therapist. You bring with you your guide. You bring with you your celestial agencies down into hell. Most of us know about Christ's crucifixion, and most of us know about Christ's resurrection, but it's a trinity. The death, bardo, rebirth is also depicted in the Christ Trinity trilogy, which is the crucifixion. The death comes first, then comes the harrowing. What's the harrowing? Then comes the resurrection, the ascension. The harrowing of Christ is a time where he descends voluntarily into the pit of hell. And there he finds all the souls that have been cast out, including Adam and Eve, including Satan. It is a great descent into the unconscious where it's chaos. It's a descent into chaos. There's no order there. All the parts of us that were too overwhelming, we're not welcome. We're cast out there, down there. And what happens is Christ liberates them. He frees them. And the way that I understand that is Christ consciousness includes them, remembers them from being broken and fragmented like a pottery vase shard. He brings them back into the fold of Christ consciousness. He doesn't just die and ascend. He goes into the pit of hell and he finds the unsavory, the ugly, the disenfranchised, the sinner. He confronts those aspects of our being that are the shadow aspect, the unwanted, the one that doesn't follow the rules, the condemned. We are talking now about the confrontation, which is the trial. The trial happens in so many different variations. I'm giving you this one in case there was childhood trauma. Then it's like, how do I go back? This is how you go back. What Jung learned, definitely one of his contributions, is that the past is never done and the dead never die. He has multiple dreams that he discusses in his memory dreams and reflections that show him that the past is never done and that the dead never die. What does that mean for us? Well, we know in neuroscience that the past is never done. We know from the neuroscience of memory that the things that happen to us in the past, though they feel static and completed, they're infinitely revisable. They're always alive and active. There is a child in us that lives under the ice sheet that's not dead just because we inhabited a 40, 50, or 60-year-old body. That child is still there. In fact, that child is still there and in an unknown default program setting has attracted like-minded parents to constellate a near equivalent of childhood to reiterate itself unconsciously over and over again. Uncannily, it will choose the same predicament and the same what are they called? Unusual Suspects? Was that the movie? Unusual Suspects? The default program of the unconscious, the traumatized child, will attract the unusual suspects so that its early experience can be replicated. Now you think to yourself, why would that happen? Well, it's operating even beyond the pleasure principle, because it's not pleasant to be re-traumatized again and again. So the pleasure principle that Freud talked about is not at play here. Something much deeper is here. It's a principle called familiarity, sameness. It's a default setting. It wants it, even if it's uncomfortable and unpleasant and re-traumatizing, it wants to know. But then even deeper than that, if you get into the spiritual explanation, it wants to replicate itself until such a time that consciousness can expand and master its situation. So in a way, it's like a life lesson that has been bequeathed to you through lineage and ancestry and transgenerational trauma. And this is one of the most remarkable and inspiring moments in my work with people is when I'm looking at a client just on the cusp of working through something, what I see is not just one human being overcoming trauma. What I see is one human being overcoming generations of trauma. And oh my God, is that mind blowing? Because without fail, if you start looking at the causes and conditions that come together for childhood trauma, what you see there is the car collision of multiple generations of unprocessed trauma in order to create those causes and conditions in which we ourselves find ourselves being the recipient of just another iteration, and iteration after iteration after iteration. If there was molestation and sexual abuse, the chances are very likely it reiterated itself right down the line. If there's terrible scarcity, there's great chances that there was war in generations earlier, and there actually was great scarcity. And the echo of that is reverberated through time, so that even though there's plenty of money and resources around now, the unconscious is still operating under those faint echo. And what an honor, you guys, what an honor you have to have enough virtue to be on a journey, to have the precious human life, to have the guru, the inspiration, the guidance, the inclination. The soul is whispering, it's time. It's time to end the reiteration. It's time to awaken. It's time to expand. It's time to reclaim, not just for me, but for all those that came before me, even though I despise my mother or father for what they did to me. And that's okay. That from a certain point of view, that's understandable. For what they did to you from one point is understandable, but from a larger Christ conscious point of view, you start to see that even they had no chance. They had no chance. Compared to you, they had no chance. And now you have a chance. There is a small opening, a small gap. And if you seize that gap, then truly your life is heroic, because as Joseph Campbell defined, the hero is someone who excels or optimizes their life not just for themselves but for others. And we're talking taking a good look back into history and cleaning up the stream of its pollutants and toxins. But then we can flash forward and look forward. The person that you are who has overcome that, you now step into the role of totem. You're the next lineage holder now. You have taken up the sword. You have come to the table. You now earn the right to make better choices for your offspring and for future generations, because you have gone through this amazing, exceptional thing. That's why I'm concerned so much about these world leaders. They haven't been tested. They haven't been broken through. They haven't been broken down. They're still consumed with so much hubris, and they're still under the throes of their own greed and desire, possibly their own trauma. They haven't gone on truly a remarkable journey. They haven't dissolved. They haven't broken through. What right do they have to sit at that table? None. They have no right to lead. We're talking about leaderships of the future are people that have had a spiritual awakening and who know how to manage polarities, to respect diversity and hold it in a greater unity. They will know that. You will know that. Okay, any questions so far? One or two as I find the stop. Okay. Oh, lots of chatter on the chat. Okay, good for you guys. Thank you for doing that. Sorry, I can't monitor the chat, but it looks like it's just amongst you. So good. Test enemies and allies innermost cave and the great ordeal. Tested at enemies and allies is that you can't do this alone. And along the way, if you're willing to surrender in the labyrinth, then inevitably you have these bumps. And like I've already mentioned, what I'm trying to help us all remember, most especially myself, is the bumps are the good bits. Shit. I mean, if I could really live from that place, that the bumps are the good bits. I mean, like Matthew, Doreen, so many of you, you guys have this, I bow to you because you have this ability, like you're much more flexible than me. I know you have your dark moment too, and I'll be there for you, but also I bow to you, I respect you because I see you with your bumps and your bruises and your broken toes. And I'm inspired because I see the flexibility. I see that you have not just intellectualized it as an opportunity, you have embodied it as an opportunity, which is, okay, I open to this too. What is this teaching me? That is the quintessential spiritual question for a bump or an obstacle or a challenge or a foe or an enemy. What does this have to teach me? What is this teaching me? Because if it truly is that we are following the lead of our soul, do we have the faith and the conviction that the soul is teaching us exactly what we need to become who we can become? This issue of faith has come up so much in my conversations with my friends here in Bali because I think prior generations long ago had much more faith and probably not a lot of reason, or not as well crafted or well designed or well articulated reason. I look at the Tibetan culture, for example, and I can see this, even though they may not be skilled and adept at reading scripture and understanding nuances and refining their analysis. Their devotion is an incredible asset to them, particularly in light of their genocide and displacement. Truly, just the ordinary among them, because of civilizational inheritance of devotion, the ability to reframe crisis as, well, it's part of my karma. My karma is burning off. It has something to teach me. It's a life lesson that's going to help me grow. This is in their DNA. And those of us that don't have that fortune of the immediacy of faith and devotion, we're navigating based on will, individuality, reason. It can only go so far. Then what happens when crisis comes? What happens when tests comes? What happens when enemies are faced? I think it's an incredible thing to see people who can embody this principle. You can see their dexterity, their fluency. It's not always as graceful as a ballerina or an ice skater. It's not like that. It's not like a movie. But once in a while you can see like someone with whom you feel kinship with, that is, let's say, for lack of better expression, is on the same level as you. It's not a Geshe Tenzin Zopa. It's somebody ordinary. But they show that quality of dexterity and flexibility in the face of some challenge, because underlying it, they're looking at the universe and saying, I accept even this for my growth. I may not know right now. I may not know right now what its purpose is, but I accept it nevertheless. So those are micro moments along the way. Then there is the bigger one, the ordeal. I cannot tell you what your ordeal is, but it's magnitudes in order, more significant than each of the little bumps and missteps and impasses and moments of confrontation along the way. It's it's the central axis, the foundation of your identity is challenged. And it has to be so. It can't be 3 stories up. There's like an earthquake and it trembles. It has to be foundation destroying. That's why I look out at the collective and I say, yes, we're there as a collective. We're definitely there as a collective. I mean, we're on 2 or maybe less degrees Celsius before it's there. So we're in the midst of it. For you individually, maybe what I'm suggesting is some of you already were destroyed by childhood trauma, but maybe you've made it this far in your survival adaptation. So part of going through the dark night is to go back and put yourself with consciousness and with all your assets now, all the tools that you've developed along up your summit, the mountain. Now you bring them to bear by revisiting that early one. This is how I'm reframing the hero's journey as a traumatic recovery or as a traumatic healing. For others, it's something else. And I guess the final thing I want to say is I've been saying it all along, but it's worth repeating because it's so poignant that the trial and the treasure are 2 sides of the same coin. And when one side of the coin is facing you, you don't actually know what's on the other side of the coin. You can only see one side of the coin at a time. You can speculate and imagine when you're calm what might be on the other side, but it's very, very difficult to see because you haven't gone through it to the other side. You haven't pierced the event horizon. And there's no going around, right? You have to go through the trial, and it is only by going through the trial of facing the dragon, facing the demon, going into the depths of Hades, reclaiming all that is there, all the shard fragments of your past, reassembling them, solve et coagula, that you come to understand what is on the other side, what life renewing quality or spirit or conviction is on the other side. And this moment is why Damien Eccles would this is why Damien Eccles would say I'd have it no other way, because it's only someone who has gone through the fire and found something so life affirming on the other side of death that they didn't know before would say, and I'd have it no other way. If this is the price that I have to pay for understanding my destiny, for understanding my purpose, for understanding truly who I am for the first time in countless lives, for having something to bequeath onto my community, not just for now, but for future generations. It's only someone who tastes that can recognize all the generational trauma, pain, and torture that has been faced and processed would have been worth it. And this is why, I mean, if you haven't gotten there, maybe you're pissing in your boots right now, and that would be understandable because it's like I'm signing up for that. The point is you wouldn't be in your right mind to sign up for that. And that's the point. It defies logic to sign up for that. Nobody would sit there and calculate, well, I'll go on this journey knowing in advance that it would be your death. And knowing that there's no guarantee. I mean, I can tell you this. It's not a great thing to say. but not everybody gets through. It's not guaranteed that you get through. And what I mean by that is it's not like you go up to it, you face the dragon, and you automatically slay the dragon on the first go, or tame the dragon on the first go. I've worked with plenty in the real time of things. This can take decades. You can be on this part of the landscape of the map for decades. It's not like it's one day and you go through. Just show me your hands. How many of you feel like you're at least in the middle section of the journey? Okay. And of those people holding their hands in the between Bardo initiation trial, how many of it has been more than a couple of years? Yeah, so I just want you to get that snapshot of people. Like this is, it's one thing to read it in the myth where you turn the page and the page itself is the transition between trial and treasure. Okay. In the scope of a real life, that can be a quarter of your life. And then people are going, I'm still in it. And I've spent a decade here. What's wrong with me? No, this is how long it takes. Keep reading the myths. I mean, look at Odysseus, 10 years from Troy back to Ithaca, 10 years. And also from the civilization reboot, how long do you think it is before? I mean, we won't, none of us will be around to see the civilizational reboot. And that's another heroic, transpersonal, awe-inspiring proposal. Despite, and by the way, you can be on a different trajectory in your personal journey than we are a collective. But whatever contribution you make to the collective, you might not be around to see its result because the time spans are so vast that even one generation is not enough to get even into dip the toe in. So think about the heroic implications of participating in the dawning, the inception, by acculturating the right energy, following the archetypal signature of what's coming in and aligning yourself that way, and starting to work on projects of decentralization, for example, or regeneration, regenerative agriculture, that you know you're just in that experimental phase and that it's just setting up future generations of accumulated knowledge. And you're looking at a time span of 2,150 years. The first 500 years being like mucking about in adolescence. That we are a generation that has to have enough humility to say that is the right orientation for a precious human life, even though it's just a drop. But I'll do it. I'll do it because, and also I may also, my soul will be the recipient of that which I bequeath. On the tail end of this life, I am a continual returner and recipient of it, along with my kin. Not in this life form, but iteration after iteration. I mean, one way to look at this is this beautiful documentary by our teacher Geshe Tenzin Zopa, The Unmistaken Child, in which the tradition of the Tulku system of going to find the reincarnation of the last Lama, the last guru. Why? Because the institution of continuity is expressing itself in multiple generations of lifetime. It's the boy or the girl who, whatever. I mean, the Dalai Lama said he might be reborn as a girl. Okay. They go and find the girl because the continuity of consciousness transcends one life and reiterates itself. The wisdom, if trauma can replicate itself over the generations, so too can wisdom, in other words. That makes perfect sense. That makes complete sense. By whatever way that trauma is reiterating itself over generation after generation into the DNA, through epigenetics, into the neurobiology of the human being, and through the soul, in parallel with the soul mind across countless iterations of continuity, so too can the wisdom. So you find the wisdom being who is the receptacle of that wisdom lineage, and you keep them cloistered, you keep them protected, you protect their minds. I've been able to see two, three, four lamas now that have died in my time, my lifetime, and their reincarnations revered. It's not just for the teacher and the continuity, preserving the continuity of that consciousness, but also for the sangha and also for the community. The very enactment of revering a teacher and of keeping that hope alive and aligning themselves with virtue makes their life upgradable and optimizable and of benefit. So that institution, a lot of people look at that institution and say it's archaic and it's patriarchal and it deserves to go. It's reincarnation is silly, it's suspicious. And maybe all of that is true from the left brain, but from the right brain, it creates the most elegant mythopoetics of preserving wisdom traditions across continuity so that both the teacher and the student and the community and the extended family can upgrade and evolve in the optimal way. That's what that is for, that institution. And then you're participating in that in your own hero's journey by going through this individually and then participating in the collective, and then you're becoming the recipient of it over and over again. I mean, this is an opportunity to shake off and dust off some of our materialistic, reductionistic scientific paradigm that assumes that we'll be dead and that will be it and the game is over. Here's an ending consideration among the others that I gave for you for this week. What if you're not already there and primed your mind to infinite life continuity, what if that were true? What if that were true as a mythopoetic? What if it were true literally? What if consciousness does continue? What if the game doesn't end? How would it change your behavior? How would it change your lifestyle? How would it redefine your priorities? How would it redefine your role in your own life with your family, but vis-a-vis past generations and future generations? What kind of mythology, how would that mythology impact you? How would it shape you? How would it mold you? How would it contain you? How would it inspire you? Most of you are already there. And yes, I'm sure you can affirm that having adopted through experimentation and through critical reason and then by way of intuition, giving way you're over to something deeper in your soul, that life paradigm is much more life affirming. It gives much more purpose. It gives much more significance, and it gives much more hope. And hope is definitely sorely needed. Okay. Looking at the faces, I've got some tired people here in Bali. They're done with this monologue. How about you guys online? Okay. Thumbs up. Okay. There's Sabina. Hi, Sabina. And Arturo. Lauren. Hi, Lauren. Do we? Okay, where are they? Let's go find those lost souls and bring them into the fold. Hutu got Hutu and Lisa. Sorry about that, Lisa. We're reclaiming you from the bardo. Any comment, one good question to sum it up or to recap, or so we have one session left for mythology. It goes by quickly, guys. It goes by quickly. There's hopefully here's the assignment just to reiterate it. Okay, the assignment for number 1 is follow your mythology. Assignment number 2 was to experiment with your reactivity, reflectivity. Assignment number 3 is to find yourself personally on the meta map, where even if it's not clear what of the triad, which of the trinity you might be in, and start to anticipate what's coming down the road. Like, one way you can intersect with this is like if you haven't found the mentor yet, you haven't found the teacher, you haven't found the tradition, you haven't called in, you've embarked, you're ready to leave home, but you don't have a tribe. So pray, not from ordinary consciousness. Switch the dial, switch, take 10 minutes, take 5 minutes, switch the vibration, go into that transtemporal place, that what we call the quantum. Don't ever call in something from fear. You have to recognize it's all good and it's already there. It's an ironic twist. You can't ask from things from desperation, because from the quantum it's non-dual. What I mean by that, from the quantum space, you have already inside you everything that you need. And if you can feel that, if you can tap that it's already there. This is why the symbol of the chatra from last session, the spire, the mythology that emerged on our pilgrimage with Geshe Tenzin Zopa about the renewal or the completion of the spire. Why that's so significant is exactly in these micro moments. If you're calling in from the point of view or the vibration of the incompletion, you just get like versus like signal. If you call in something from desperation or from scarcity or from fear, it's not your words, it's your vibration. That's the signal. If you can use your sangha, if you can use your guru, if you can use your whatever you have available to you to change the setting, to remember the stupa is already complete. Now, is it complete totally? No. Your diamond essence is never breakable, but the world of conventions and the world of the conventional world, the conventional reality is fragmented. It is. It's true that you can't deny the conventional world. But if we want to intervene in the conventional reality, you have to tap the diamond essence, which means you have to remember you're already good, you're already safe, you're already whole, you're already pure. You have within you all the guides, and spirit guides are there. They never left you. They were always there. You were always being guided by your soul. You were always being guided by the Buddha. You are already what the acorn is already there. You want to build an oak tree? Just remember you're the acorn. Remember the acorn is indestructible inside of you. Then from there, reimagine. Then you can say, conventionally, I draw in the appearances. They may come in different guises. You call in the synchronicities. You call in the spirit guides. You call in the coincidences. You call in the courage. What you're doing is you're manifesting. So you need a guide, or like, show me a sign. Show me a sign, God. I mean, how many of us know that phrase? Show me a sign. Like, you're in the desert. You're in the belly of the beast. You're in the wasteland. You're thirsty. There's no water. That's that critical pivotal moment, that Geshe Tenzin Zopa is trying to teach us about the diamond essence. Try to drop into your deepest soul and then envision the water, the sign, the mentor, the path forward, the next step forward. Thank you so much.